Divorce attorneys of Reddit. What was the most stupid reason two people wanted to divorce? She saw a picture of him contra dancing he'd posted on Facebook. She knew he went contra dancing. That part wasn't the surprise. In fact, I'm still confused about this one. Maybe she just wanted a divorce, but didn't have the guts to actually admit she wanted one. So she just blamed some stupid thing he did instead of actually assuming the guilt and fault of initiating a divorce. My client and his wife were into a role-playing game, I think Second Life. Everyone had an avatar, I suspect that is, and his wife's were much more sprightly than they were in real life. Anyway, he suspected that she was being unfaithful to him in the game, so he created a fake avatar and stalked her in the game. Sure enough, she was running around on him, having virtual sex with another bloke or bloke avatar anyway. That was it. Kid got one elephant ride too many. Mom and dad agreed before dad took daughter to circus that one elephant ride should be plenty. Mom later finds out that dad let daughter have two, not one, as agreed, but two elephant rides. As mom would describe it as doubling down again, trying to get her to hate me. I know it. Why the hell else is someone letting their kid ride an elephant halfway around the whole damn town? Everybody knows now. I have a friend who used to be a security guard at a courthouse. He said one time he had to watch over a divorce proceeding between a 80-year-old man and his 40-year-old Vietnam wife. She said, in broken English, she wanted to divorce him because he couldn't satisfy her anymore. During the beginning of the case she would yell mean things about this guy and the judge had to constantly tell her to be quiet. The old man never said a word. Eventually the judge said, we will have to continue on a future date. She immediately said then forget it, got up and walked out of the courtroom. My friend's parents divorced because his mother wanted a horse. His father argued that they can't keep a horse in a 6th floor apartment and don't have enough resources or money to rent a stable. Then she fricked her son's math teacher and became a crackhead. I feel sorry for everyone involved. Obligatory, not a lawyer, but a lawyer I know, got a case because the husband didn't change his Facebook status to married quickly enough after the wedding. It was like 2 weeks. The judge laughed at the lady and made them get marriage counseling. Lawyer pocketed north of $1,000 for that. Not an attorney, but my mom is a paralegal. There was one case that kept dragging along because they were fighting over the luggage. Once that was settled they started arguing over a $25 plastic palm tree. That palm tree prompted the case to go into mediation, costing both of them around $1,000 each just for the mediation. Well, she had a dream she was going to hell, so she blamed that on him. She now teaches Catholicism just in case. I know this isn't the reason for the divorce, sorry, but it made me wonder what precipitated the divorce, since it was so paranoid. My sister worked for a divorce attorney, and she had to field a couple of phone calls from a guy in the midst of a messy divorce. He insisted that his ex was putting rocks on his lawn to mess with the lawnmower, and he was trying to somehow add that to the divorce proceedings. Because of wife's last name. After 10 years of happy marriage she decided that she doesn't like her last name anymore. She took her husband's last name after wedding. Our legal system does not allow people to change their last name if there are kids involved, so she filed for divorce. I'm not a divorce attorney, but my former subordinate got divorced over Pokemon cards. At one point during the separation she came to work to accuse him of stealing some of her rares. It got near physical, and we had to have security forces remove the spouse so we could get back to work. They were a hot mess. A much older woman, who had been married for a very long time, told me that one morning over breakfast, out of the blue, she had a burning desire to pick up her butter knife and stab her husband to death. She took that as a sign that maybe their relationship was toxic. Not a divorce or a lawyer. But my ex years ago left me because I wanted chickens in the front yard. The conversation was something along the lines of how our futures just didn't line up. Turns out he was cheating, but you know, blame it on the damn free range hens. It became a cherished phrase almost immediately. Now but my dad stated in court that he was divorcing my mom because she was always asking him to take out the trash, or mow the lawn, or calling him at work to ask him to pick up milk, you know, adult stuff like maintaining a home and family. Her lawyer turned to her and just said, "You're dodging a bullet here. Someday you'll be glad he left." Turned out he was cheating on her. My mom made a very good life for herself. At 71 years old she can afford a house cleaning service and pays someone to maintain her lawn. Calm as a beach. I knew a couple who married super early and divorced so he could join the Naval Academy. Apparently you can't enter if you're married. They stayed together and remarried after he graduated. In Italy apparently you can save on taxes when buying first house for your own living. If you married it counts as one for the couple. Some people are getting divorced when buying another house to save on taxes again. My grandmother was stepping down into their fishing boat. My grandfather was already in the boat. He was holding the pier to stabilize the boat. A rogue wave came, pushed the boat violently away from the pier, and grandma nearly fell into the water. She accused him of intentionally trying to embarrass her. They barely spoke for 3 months. My grandfather refused to divorce because we're Catholic, but offered to live apart. I was about 10 years old, living with them during this time. Talk about a crash course in small talk. An elderly friend of mine divorced his wife so she would qualify for Medicaid and could afford her treatment for a terminal illness. He'd been married 40 years and he had strong religious values about the sanctity of marriage. The state caseworker even visited the house to make sure he wasn't living there. In her last difficult days, our stupid greedy medical system was forcing them apart. He died broken-hearted and penniless not long after she passed. Every dime he had worked his lifetime to save either went to her medical bills or the unnecessary expense of keeping 2 households to get health insurance. The wife got tired of being married to a transplant surgeon and wanted to be an S&M hooker. And yes, it turns out she had mental problems. Not a divorce attorney or anything, but when I was kid, a 15-year-old girl wanted to get married to a 20-year-old guy. Because of her age she needed her parents, so she begged and pleaded with her parents who eventually allowed it for when she turned 16. But the guy divorced her after 4 years because she refused to have sex or even kiss, like it never occurred to her sex was involved. I suppose this is more of a reflection of the sex education she received. Not an attorney, but my aunt divorced her husband because he snored. That's what she told us. Anyway, they had been together for 15 years, so I'm not sure why it took so long to figure out it was a deal breaker. A couple in Australia threatened to divorce if gay marriage became legal. But surprise surprise, when it eventually became legal they didn't go through with it. So back in the pre-iPhone era, there was a newly married couple in my apartment building. Maybe 3 to 4 months in, I come home and hear them fighting about what the exact time is. Like one was saying it's 8:15 and the other was like no it's 8:13. So the next day the guy just walked out and I never saw him again. Later I found out they got divorced over some silly fight. Not a lawyer, but my dad's friend got divorced because they couldn't agree on what kind of house to buy. He wanted one with an apartment so they can have extra income and she didn't want some stranger living in her house. So they split up over it. If the reason told was stupid, most likely happened to be the straw that broke the camel's back and there were more serious underlying issues. Not a divorce attorney, but there was a case in Kuwait where a woman wanted to divorce her husband because he eats hummus with a fork. Weird Al Yankovic got divorced when his wife joined the Columbia Record Club. He couldn't handle that kind of commitment. She didn't want to pay for part of the health insurance bill. The husband wants to vaccinate the child while the mother is against it. A guy I used to work with said his wife divorced him because she claimed God spoke to her and told her he wanted her to move the French Riviera to be wined and dined by wealthy M, because apparently God encourages casual hookups and wealthy men in the Riviera are lining up to sleep with 40-something mothers of 4. Husband was running a perfectly legal weapon store EU country where of course everyone with a legal license to possess a weapon could buy one, e.g. hunters, police, etc. After a state inventory audit, some of his stock wasn't registered appropriately, so he was charged with some misdemeanor of illegal possession of weapons etc. Now his wife freaked the F out and asked for a divorce. Poor guy tried to convince her that it was only a logistics error and that he isn't a crime overlord etc. But she wouldn't hear. Funniest part of the story was when at the divorce court, she accused him of wearing a necklace with an actual bullet, which of course was a decommissioned and harmless bullet. The guy responded, "Following my instructions, I have to market my business somehow you know and everyone, including the judge, laughed." Of course all charges were eventually dropped. They divorced, let's say favorably for both parties. But I still say that he dodged a bullet. This lady didn't trust her hubby at all. I know a couple that wanted a divorce after 35 years because one of them were not happy with who their son was dating. People man, proof that even time can't heal stupidity. A friend is dating someone with divorced parents for a similar reason. The mum would lay down ridiculously high standards for their kids' partners and was driving the kids away. The dad wanted a good relationship with his kids so left her. I don't think it's a particularly stupid reason for divorce GBH. I'm not a divorce attorney, but I once worked with this dude that was like 19 years old. Seemed a bit young to be married, then he said she was his second wife. He said he divorced his first wife because she kept grinding the gears in his car. Not a lawyer here, but the stories I've seen of people being forced to consider divorce to afford medical bills, even though they still love each other, are pretty damn stupid in a very different way than you were thinking when you wrote this question, I think. There's not really a good answer to your question. I've had tons of clients who got divorced over all sorts of fricked up and really good reasons. I haven't had one where the reason given was just absolutely petty and pointless. It's an expensive, very public, and drawn out process. Almost no one gets divorced on a whim. It's an expensive, very public, and drawn out process. Maybe we're in wildly different states, but divorce does not have to be expensive, drawn out, or very public at all. If the two parties agree, it is no big deal. Just a bunch of boring paperwork, on or 2 visits to a notary, and 5 minutes in the courtroom. You're probably only seeing the more complicated cases, which actually need an attorney. My ex-wife, I was repairing a pipe in the bathroom sink. I tell her, "Please give me a glass. I need to drink water from the sink tap." She screams, "Are you crazy? Go to the kitchen fountain. The water in the bathroom fountain, you never have to drink it." She believed that all over the world we had 2 types of water and double pipes that carry 2 types of water in each house. One for the kitchen and one for the bathroom. The dude Alex, we call him, wanted a divorce because his wife, we call her Jennifer, gave birth to his child. I laughed when he told me, lol. Not a divorce lawyer or practitioner of law defense of any kind, but boy have I got a story to share. My cousin, well, she's got a problem in that she can't seem to be happy being single and has an intense desire for that fairytale happily married life. A few years back, she starts talking with this Mormon bloke and claims to be in love with him, has met him lots of times, spends hours on video calls with him and the like. After a few months, he proposes, and she sorts out her first passport, leaves her son with an ex-boyfriend he was as close as being this kid's dad as possible, and swears up and down to the rest of her family that she isn't going to get married. First time outside the country, possibly first time she ever met this guy. She lies to us about this shoot a lot and she gets married. Before this, she converts to Mormonism and tells us how she feels so connected to them, which she hasn't felt for so long. She never goes out, so kind of hard to feel connected, but still drinks wine and smokes. She spends a while talking about being happily married and how she imagines her dad would be so happy for her. Spoiler alert, he wouldn't be. He hated religion and Americans, and this guy was super religious and a Yank. He'd be rolling in his grave. About a year later, she's in the process of getting the unconsummated marriage annulled. Straight up annulled, no divorce, just throwing the damn thing away. There was also the time she got catfished. One of the pictures featured on gay blogs for years, and was of a bodybuilder that was actually fairly local and married with a kid. She claimed to have seen that guy, who was a former soldier, firefighter, and a model. He did have a connection to the fire service, but he was far from a sculpted Adonis he pretended to be. I think she still spoke with him for a while. Lawyer, Mickey, you can't divorce Minnie for being extremely silly. Mickey, I didn't say she was extremely silly, I said she was freaking goofy. Although my brother had stupid reasons, my mom almost going to the police takes the cake. So long story as short as I can make it goes, my bro started cheating with a 20-year-old that worked for him. He was about 40 at the time. She may have been as young as 17 to 18. Sister-in-law catches him not once but twice. They separate and he moves out. My brother's reasoning for straying was because she was mean to him and yelled at him twice. The first instance was like 10 years ago and the second was after he was already cheating. So the best part of the story, he needed someone to watch the kids on his days and he had to work. My sister-in-law had to approve the person. He asked my narcissistic mother, who is one of those that will not change her routine or life for anything, set in her ways. She not only refused, but she threatened to go to the police and say sister-in-law was blackmailing her to watch the kids. Not because they were going to keep her from the kids, no, because they wanted her to watch them and get paid. Of all the dumb things my mom thinks, this definitely up there. I wish we would have pushed her to go to the police just to see and hear their reaction to her blackmail claim. Stupid that it had to happen, but technically a good reason. My mom, who worked for our state's welfare agency for 35 years, convinced her brother and sister-in-law to get divorced. They were both my mom's best friends. My mom and her bro were Irish twins and my aunt and uncle were in love until the day my uncle died. But my uncle worked in construction and had no savings, and so when he got sick, he and my unemployed aunt had no income. This was my aunt's second marriage and her first husband, a teacher, never remarried and eventually passed away. In my state, even if you divorce your spouse, you can take their social security when they die if 1. You have NaN and 2. There are no other legitimate claims. She was a stay-at-home parent and never earned income, so she had no social security, and my uncle put almost nothing into the fund, so his monthly checks were pitiful. So they divorced. She petitioned for her first husband's SS, got it, and then they got remarried. To this day, even though my uncle is now deceased, we are forbidden from mentioning to her kids that her and my uncle were divorced for a few months. I was cohabitating with and engaged to a guy, and we broke up after a week-long beach house vacation with my family because I beat him in front of everyone else playing Scrabble. He was a doctor with a huge ego and said that I was supposed to let him win to make him look good. After a week of the silent treatment, when we got home, he moved out. That's okay. He was a gambling addict as well, and that was bothering me, so I was sort of pushing his buttons, I think. He wasn't as angry when I confronted him about his gambling problem, so it's funny to me that the last straw was Scrabble. My parents got divorced because my father went to a different country without the rest of us to have a week off. My mother thought he was cheating on her, so they go divorced. I still don't get it.